For several years, South Africans have said just about the same thing, that foreigners, especially Zimbabweans and Mozambicans, are flooding into South Africa to commit specific vehicle theft, car theft, robberies, and hijackings. But what if that story isn't the whole truth? What if it's actually South African criminals that are wreaking havoc across the SADC region, and the evidence is actually quite damning, starting all the way in Pretoria, via dodged documents and dodgy cops, all the way to Harare, and eventually landing in the warm heart of Africa in Lilongwe in Malawi. Think of an expensive car, 160,000 cold American dollars, a Toyota Land Cruiser 300 stolen from Zimbabwe, and 5 months later, it's found cruising in the streets of Lilongwe, being driven by a Malawian businessman who swears that he bought it legally. But that is where the story gets pretty murky, because the people who hired the car in Zimbabwe, they're South African. And it wasn't their first time either. Welcome to Dug Up, where people and places are investigated. This is the Big Car Syndicate, an investigation by Jack McBrums for Dug Up. It all began in Harare on April 26, 2025 at Afro Trails Car Hire, a high-end rental company in Borodale. The owner, Nesbet Mkora, had just finished his day when two white South African women walked in, led by a woman called Jolene Margaret Jansen van Vuren. They were calm, the women, confident, with all the right paperwork, passports, South African driver's licenses that checked out, even payment through Mkuru. Afro Trails staffer Desire Nyakurwa remembers them clearly, and he says these women, they were very polite, they were professional, and everything about them seemed above board. The women told the company that they were going to Kariba, a popular resort in Zimbabwe, for a week's holiday. And for 5 days, everything actually seemed normal until the 6th day. Their phones went dead. The GPS tracker on the car, it went silent, it was cut off, and the Land Cruiser was gone, just like that, into the wind. Mukora reported the theft to the Zimbabwe Republic Police, but the progress, it was slow. So he hired a private investigator, Tafadzwa Shidawa, a former detective known for tracking down smuggling syndicates. Shidawa followed the digital breadcrumbs, and within days, he had found the vehicle. He first found that the vehicle had crossed into Mozambique, and then it crossed into Malawi. But there was something else. The car's identity had changed. The chassis number had been swapped, and the car's registration had been cloned. Basically, these two South African women, they'd cloned the car's identity with another Toyota Land Cruiser registered in South Africa. It's actually apparently a very common trick for these South African criminal syndicates. So how does a foreign vehicle cross a border, get customs clearance, and an Interpol certificate all within hours? A retired border official told Jack McBrums that even legitimate cars take 2 or 3 days to process, and that the only way that this car would have made it into Malawi this fast is if somebody fast-tracked it internally. In plain terms, someone on the inside helped. And the paper trail pointed to something far bigger than one stolen car. Help actually came from Pretoria. An affidavit from one Captain Jeffrey Barry Lucas of the South African Police Service confirmed that the registration papers were stolen and falsified. So according to the South African police, the registration certificate used for the Land Cruiser had been reported stolen in Pretoria Central months earlier, and the so-called clearance letter from Westbank, that was also fake. Captain Lucas confirmed it, saying Miss Van Vuren has 2 outstanding warrants of arrest. One of those is in Namibia, and another one is actually in South Africa, and both are for theft of motor vehicles. Her method, it's quite simple. She hires luxury cars, she changes their identities, she forges clearance certificates, and then she sells them across the borders for about 50 to 60,000 US dollars. She wasn't working alone, however. This was a South African-led syndicate using the SADC region as a car theft highway. In May, police in Malawi arrested 2 suspects, Tendai Mtungwazi and Kabele Kotele, a South African. The vehicle itself was found and recovered and then impounded. So for a moment, it seemed justice was near. But then there was a twist. The Lilongwe Magistrates Court returned the stolen vehicle to Kawanga, that Malawian businessman. Why? Because they said Mkora's lawyer missed the hearing. And the second thing, the court ruled that since Kawanga bought the car in good faith and had all the official papers, then he was a bona fide purchaser. This is despite the fact that handling stolen goods is a crime in Malawi. You could almost say it's a crime of universal jurisdiction. In most countries, you will go to jail for handling stolen goods, regardless of how they ended up in your arms. Even Malawi's Director of Public Prosecutions, Masauko Chamkalala, was caught off guard by this revelation. She basically said, "We were not told about that court order, and that's a separate issue." Meanwhile, the two suspects remain in Maula prison, apparently awaiting trial. This case has revealed deep cracks in the region's security system. If a stolen luxury vehicle can move from Zimbabwe to Malawi in days and get cleared by both customs and Interpol, then the system isn't just broken, it's compromised. If Van Vuren could get an Interpol clearance within hours, it means someone in the system helped her get that. And that isn't negligence at all, that is collusion. And that collusion means that stolen cars, guns, and drugs can cross SADC borders disguised as legal trade, leaving buyers out in the cold and creating potentially dangerous situations. For years, South Africans have blamed foreign nationals, especially Zimbabweans and Mozambicans, for vehicle crime inside their borders. But the Afro Trails case flips that script on its head. This ringleader was South African. The forged papers that allowed this to work, they came from South Africa, and the regional network used Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Malawi, which became the dumping grounds of stolen property, basically fell prey to what had happened in South Africa. Interpol data shows that cross-border car thefts in SADC have risen sharply, with syndicates exploiting weak border coordination and corruption at clearance points. This isn't a story about one missing Land Cruiser. It's about a network and how borders have become pretty much business lines for organized crime. This may be one car, but this particular syndicate has done this at least 30 times, and there are others that haven't even been touched yet by Jack McBrum's investigation. That Land Cruiser worth 300 million kwacha, about $170,000, still drives the streets of Lilongwe today. It's a symbol of wealth and impunity, because until our borders talk to each other, South African criminals will keep exporting their crimes, and the rest of the region will keep importing that chaos. I'm Manyo. This was an investigation by Jack McBrums for Dug Up in Lilongwe, Malawi. See you in the next investigation.